You see an
All right.
announcement.
Yes, it's there. All right. So good afternoon again, colleagues. Thank you for staying with us for this last session. I know Mr. Leslie had introduced me as the Beres Hammond, but I am not a singer and I will not attempt to do that. All right. So I was sharing with you that for this session, you're going to need your lesson plan, one lesson plan, and also access to the appraisal document. Now, this appraisal document, if you don't have a hard copy, you can find the soft copy on our website. And I know Mrs. Spirit Wilmot will put that link in the chat for you so you can grab onto that later on. We today, as you are aware, I'll be looking on the appraisal as mentioned earlier. But just to say to you that I will not be looking on or discussing today as a disclaimer, I will not be looking on the design of the appraisal instrument. Neither will I be looking on the descriptors. I will be referencing the teacher portfolio. However, I will not be discussing in detail its design and the different components. But I'm not leaving you stranded, teachers, because as of next week, Thursday, around 5 p.m., our CEO, Dr. Winsome Gordon, will be resuming our appraisal discussions or appraisal conversations online. And so by way of promotion, you can check out our JTC website and our social media pages for information on that. So what then will I be discussing this afternoon? I want you to know that as a teacher and in the appraisal process, there are many different players. And these players are found at different stages. You as a classroom teacher, you need to understand what aspects of the process you are responsible for in order to ensure that the appraisal activity is one that is smooth and one that is objective. So what is your main responsibility? Apart from you ensuring that students are learning and ensuring that you're doing what is on your job description, I want to put it to you that your main responsibility in the appraisal process is to locate, gather, organize, and curate your artifacts to use as evidence. All right? We are going to be on our evidence trail. Says my audio is low. Let me see if that's better for the person who it's low. I hope that's better. If not, I guess it's on your end. So for the evidence trail, what we will be discussing today, we will be discussing what is appraisal evidence. We want to look on how to categorize your evidence. We're going to quickly scan a lesson plan. Well, you are going to scan your lesson plan, I should say, and we are going to discuss how to organize the evidence for that postmortem appraisal discussion. Feel free to post your questions, your comments, your reactions in the chat, and you can also use the raise hand feature so that you can actively engage in this activity. Now, to ensure that we are, someone says, our doctors expected to stop in the middle of surgery to take picture to put in their e-portfolio. Just curious. I trust iPhone, that's not your name, by the end of this activity, you will be able to get that answer. All right? So I want you now, if you're ready to come on this trail with me, to just place in the chat, yes, 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 and I'll see that you're ready, you're off the assessment, and you are now focused on the appraisal. I see the yeses coming into the chat. Very good. All right. Wonderful. So we're continuing. We have been in professional development sessions all day. And we're now at our first pit stop, our first trail stop. But I want you to take a look at this picture. And I want you to put yourself in the position or the shoe of the teacher. And let us call this teacher Mrs. Webster. Here is Mrs. Webster. And here is the appraiser. Appraiser could be the principal, the senior teacher. And the appraiser says, went to Mrs. Webster's classroom, your evaluation is based on what you do in the next 30 seconds. Go. Think of yourself as Mrs. Webster. If you were Miss Webster, if you were in this situation, what would you be thinking? What would be on your mind? What would you be thinking? You're there teaching your class. Here comes the appraiser and saying to you, 30 seconds, go. I'm ready to see what you can do. Would you be thinking, I am not prepared? Oh gosh, I'm going to fail. Or you're like, sure, no worries. I have been doing this. I have evidence of what I've been doing, so I am good. A, B, or C. And if not, someone says continue. Tracy and says, oh, I would just continue teaching. Someone, and Stacy and says she will continue teaching. All right, someone says that. C for me, no worries. I have my evidence. I'll go on. So A, B, or C. I am prepared. A, B, I'm going to fail. C, no worries. I have my evidence. I will go. And if that's not you, what would you be saying otherwise? Allow the class to say hello. C. I'm looking at what's happening. I will continue to teach, not lose any focus. I'll feel intimidated. I've got this. Okay. Continue teaching. I'm prepared. I have my evidence. Very good, Alicia. Oh, the lesson goes as planned. Okay. Chrissy says, I'm hoping. Florence says, run the boat. Nicola says, go ahead. I'm teaching. I'm that confident in what I'm doing. All right. Question number 2. What would you do if you were this teacher? Would you get anxious? So now that you have thought about, I'm going to be failing, all of that. Where's your emotion? Would you get anxious? Would you start biting your nails? Would you get defensive and say, why are you coming to my class? No, I wasn't sure of this. Or would you start to cry? Would you start to beg and plead and say, oh gosh, come back at another time, not today, not now? A, B, or C, would you get anxious, get offensive for B? Or would you cry or ask for time off? Give me a next time. Someone say, oh, I would be relaxed. No, because it's up to me. I'll get nervous, continue teaching. I'll ask him to leave respectfully. Answer not given. Okay. And that's okay, Dehede, if you're not free answering here. Anxious, but keep my composure. Great. So let us now look on the appraisal, the finding appraisal evidence. And I want you, you might be asking, why did I ask the first question and these questions and showed you that picture? The reality is we know that the appraisal time can be very stressful for teachers. And it's really stressful, especially for those teachers who feel as though they are unprepared. One way that you can minimize your anxiety as a classroom teacher in the appraisal process is to ensure that you are collecting, you are storing, you're analyzing, and you are having ready your artifacts so that when your appraiser comes, you can say, hey, you know what? I've got this. Then it says pretend not to be there. All right. So whether you want to pretend yes or no, Dinette, you can say, you know what? I've got this. And you can confidently say that because you would have had your appraisal evidence. So what do we mean by appraisal evidence? Appraisal evidence refers to the multiple data sources that provide for a comprehensive and authentic performance portrait of the teacher's work. And I want you to look on the quote, performance portrait. It's a picture that you are developing, you are putting out there for your appraisal of yourself, of your craft. All right. And it is multiple sources. It's not a one item or two items. You can have evidence from multiple sources, and we will discuss those later. Here we are. What's the purpose of appraisal evidence? So why should I have this multiple source artifact? Why should I have information about my craft? Why should I create a portrait of my teaching? Look back on Miss Webster. Mrs. Webster rather, is approached by her appraiser. And the appraiser says, your evaluation is based on what you do in the next 30 seconds. Right there and then, you know it is an observation that is going to take place. And there is nothing that this appraiser can see in 30 seconds or in a one-shot observation or even 2 times or even 3 times visiting a class can see everything that Mrs. Webster is about. So the appraisal evidence will help to complement classroom observation. It will provide the basis on which data analysis and reflection can be developed. So as you gather your data, you're able to reflect on what you have and you can have that discussion. It also helps to clarify for your appraiser the instructional relationship between the lesson plans, your student work, and the assessments. Someone says, Sadian says, I don't understand why teachers only feel comfortable when they are informed of the visit. Shouldn't you always be prepared? Remember, you're not putting on a show to the appraiser. You're supposed to be putting on your best foot for the students at that time. All right. Yes, Sadian, you're on the ball. Yes, when you are gathering your evidence, it doesn't matter when your appraiser comes because you know that you would have had that portrait. And whatever they see today, you have that evidence in which you can say, I can show you what I have been doing, not just today or yesterday, but from September. I want you to note, colleagues, that the use of evidence is not about finding you guilty or negligent, but it is rather to enrich that appraisal discourse, that discussion. Remember, the appraisal is not a punitive exercise. It is developmental. All right, it is a developmental activity where we identify, or your managers identify your strengths, your weaknesses, and those areas that you would need to be developed. All right, and that's from your context. And Mr. Leslie, earlier in his presentation, kept speaking and referencing to you the notion of contextualizing whatever it is you are doing at your school. It is within the context of your school. So too is the appraisal discussion. The appraisal discussion is a contextualized discussion which occurs in your school, and it is also contextualized to the teacher. So teachers, you're not to be afraid of speaking with your appraiser, and one way in which to open and to ensure that you have frank and open and objective discourse is by the use of your evidence, where you can show and you can present and you can reflect on what it is that you have done. All right? Through the use of the evidence also, you will remove subjectivity from your appraisal activity. All right? And you will replace it with objectivity because you're coming with evidence. Hard facts. It's as if you're going to the court, but I don't want to use a court case scenario, but you're taking hard facts, data you are taking to your appraisal activity, and this will make the experience fair and equitable. Moving on quickly, I know when it comes to the appraisal discussion, that there are many questions that persons have as it relates to what it is that I am doing. So I want us to address the elephant in the room. And the elephant that I want to address is that of uncertainty as it relates to the appraisal process and as it relates to the evidence. First question, are there specific minimums or maximums and or range for the number of pieces of evidence teachers should provide to their evaluators? That's a question that I often get. And the answer to that is no. But this is a conversation that you would have had with your appraiser in that when you meet with your appraiser, with your team, with your senior teacher, you would have agreed upon how many artifacts you would need or which artifacts you must have to present as it relates to a particular criteria, the standard to which you will be assessed on. So you need to agree on that. However, you can appreciate that there are certain artifacts that as a teacher, you must have as in your arsenal. All right. And that goes to your number 2 question. Are there any must-haves, any pieces that as a teacher you must have? And the answer to that is definitely yes. As a teacher, you must have your lesson plans. You must have examples of student work. You must have assessment records as part of your artifact. So those main staples you must have as your evidence, as part of your portrait, your evidence portrait. Are those the only artifacts that you need? The answer is no. Question 3, getting rid of the uncertainty, getting rid of the elephant out of the room. Can teachers use one artifact, say for example, just a picture or a type of artifact, or just one lesson plans only as the source of evidence throughout the appraisal process? And the answer to that, we're saying no. As a teacher, you have many layers to use. So why would you want to only showcase evidence using one type of artifact? All right. So you're going to use as many different types of artifacts, and we will be identifying some of these shortly. All right. So you can have many multiple source, many different layers. Don't stick with just a lesson plan or stick with just those documents that you are supposed to have. All right. Because what that does is that it will not highlight your depth as an educator. And you want your appraiser to see the full story of your craft. Are teachers given a score for their evidence document? Your evidence document, which is the portfolio, is not a scored document in the appraisal process. So your portfolio should not be scored out of you're getting 90% or 80% because you are presenting your portfolio and your appraiser can see you with this document, then you get 50% or 10% based on how it looks. No. The portfolio itself in the appraisal process is not scored. What is scored is the use of the evidence, of the artifacts rather, as evidence to determine the score or the rating you get for specific standards that are on the instrument. So if it is that you were to be rated standard 1.1, and if that rating, say, was 6 points, in your teacher portfolio, you would have artifacts to defend standard 1, standard 1, guiding principle 1, standard 1. And you would have artifacts to defend why your score should not be 2, but should be 5. But the portfolio itself, whether it is beautiful or not, whether it is e-portfolio or it is a physical document or not, it is not graded. It is the content of it that you use to bring across, have that dialogue, have that communication in order for you to determine, to agree on the final rating you will get per standard. However, if you are hoping to become a master teacher and you have applied to the Jamaica Teaching Council, you will be asked to upload or to submit your teaching portfolio. And it is at that point that your teaching portfolio is scored. But it's only scored for the interview process, for shortlisting processes. All right? So your scoring of your portfolio is only done at Jamaica Teaching Council if you apply for master teacher, and it's only scored for short listing purposes. But as a classroom teacher going through the appraisal document, the appraisal process, your evidence document, which is your portfolio, it is not scored. The contents of your document you are to use to move that dialogue along, to have that discussion in order for you and your appraiser to agree on the final rating that you have. I hope that I have gotten rid of the elephant out of the room for you. Let me have some reactions in the chat, or if there is a raise of hand, I can take that at this time. LHM, I see raise of hand. Go ahead. Go ahead. LHM?
My apologies. It was up from the last session.
From the last session. That's okay. Thank you so much. But since you're on the microphone, have I gotten rid of the elephant for you in terms of any uncertainty, answering these questions that are usually posed to us as it relates to the appraisal thus far? Think I've lost LHM. Okay, then let me see in the chat. Thanks for the clarification, given the evidence to present. That's Carlene Morris. I'm giving one person the opportunity to come on the chat if you so choose. And I'm also going to ask if there's anyone who is in the YouTube room. If there's anyone posting a question there, you can always raise it in the Zoom room for me so that I can answer it for them. All right, quickly moving on. Here we have the appraisal document in front of us. Someone says, please explain the scoring again. All right, I will touch on it as I go through. All right, so a question is asked, how do you identify the score, the worth of the evidence? Your school would have gone through, and together as a school community, you would have had what is called descriptors, and it's based on the descriptors that you would determine how much of, for example, I'm pointing on the 6 mark, how much of the 6 mark here you will get for certain evidence that you have. But again, that's a discussion that you will have in-house. All right. And remember, I said earlier that the discussion, today's discussion is not on the descriptors or the appraisal instrument, but always join us. Come next week, Thursday, our CEO will go over again for you that discussion as it relates to the appraisal. So feel free to join us in those 5 o'clock sessions on a Thursday. All right. So I'm showing you on the screen at this time the appraisal instrument excerpt from it, and this is the teacher's appraisal instrument. I want you to note that you have the teaching standards, you have the performance task, and here you have the grades, the rating, the value of each standard. So you'll see 6, 4, 6, 7, 7, and the total for teaching standard or GP1 would be 30 credits. All right. At the end for this presentation, our focus is on the evidence. And I want you to pull your eyes down to the bottom, that gray area where the arrow is pointing, and you're going to see source of evidence. On the appraisal document, after every section, guiding principle section, GP, which we call GP. So after you have completed GP1 and you have gone to GP2, GP3, 4, 5, 6. After GP1 at the bottom, you will see a list of source of evidence. And I'm going to ask those who are able to find those. So I want someone to come on the chat for me for GP2 and just quickly read out for me some of the sources that are there for GP2. So I want you to locate. Remember, I'd ask you to have ready your appraisal document. So go to the bottom of GP2, look for that gray area that says source of evidence. And I see Cydia. Go ahead, Cydia. GP2, just list for me the sources that are there.
No, Miss, my hand was up from the time you had asked if there was anybody who had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Cydia. Go ahead with your question, Cydia, and then I'll take C. Robinson.
Miss, I was asking you because the teachers at my school had that concern. What if they have the evidence in their lesson plan, like for example, the activity or so is within their lesson plan, but they do not have like pictures or hard evidence to back up what is in the plan?
All right. Thank you for that, Cydia. I'll be going through that as we go through this presentation. And if I haven't responded or the presentation doesn't answer that question, you can always come back. All right. But I think I'll be able to address that for you. Okay. Go ahead, C. Robinson. Are you ready with the GP2?
Yes, ma'am. Is it the part that says teacher knows how to teach a subject or subjects for which he or she is responsible? Is it that?
No. So look back on my.
It says GP2.
GP2, right. So you're going to go all the way down and similar to what is on the screen. Look at my red arrow. It says source of evidence.
Right, the lesson plan.
Right, go down. I think on your document, it might be at the top of the next page.
The lesson plan, action plan, that's it?
Right, very good. So read out those sources for me.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, go.
Okay, lesson plans, action plans, academic certificates, teaching portfolio, scope and sequence of subject taught, reference list of sources.
All right, so that's GP1. Can you find GP2 for me, C. Robinson? Thanks for that, Sandries. Go down, scroll down in your document. We're locating the evidence. I want you to understand, colleagues, that the evidence are on the appraisal document. So you don't have to be pulling ears to try to identify where they're from. All right, so let me go to Diane. Diane, can you find the source of evidence for GP2? Go ahead, Diane, for me. Read them out.
Right. GP2, it's lesson plans, photographs, videos, lesson observation, action plans, samples of students' work, assessment reports, needs assessment, record books on students' performance, and teachers' log.
Very good. Thank you, Diane. Christine, GP3. Go ahead, Christine. Go down to GP3. Angela, I'm coming to you next for GP4. Go ahead, Christine.
Okay, we have continuous assessment records, assessment strategies, action research, brief anecdotal records, training kit, log of co-curricular activities, student register, critical incident report, lesson plans, photographs, videos, observation, action plan, samples of students' work, behavioral modification techniques.
Very good. Thank you. Angela, your turn. I think you're on GP4. Go ahead, Angela. I'm not hearing Angela. Let me go to someone's mic is open. Is that Angela? Go ahead. All right, I'm not hearing Angela. So Tamisia. Go ahead, Tamisia or Tamika. I'm seeing the hands, but I'm not hearing anybody. That's Angela, right?
Here.
Go ahead, Angela. Thank you.
So GP4 certificates, written documents, self-assessment instruments, checklist, observation instruments, checklist completed by supervisors or other observers, professional body membership record, report of knowledge sharing, peer assessment, evidence of students' work, class progress report, and analysis of assessment.
Thank you so much.
GP4.
GP4. Tamik, I think you can unmute now. Your GP5. And for those who are asking, Mrs. Brett Wilmot has just placed in the chat. And oh, that's the registration. She will be placing the JTC web link shortly for you to go to the resource section and you can find the appraisal documents. Go ahead, Tamika, GP5.
I will do so shortly, yes.
Sources of evidence, records of communication with parents, guardians, use of social media to contact parents, parent conference, parent log, consultation log, evidence of community involvement, photographs of projects, students' work signed by parents.
Thank you so much, Tamisia. Chantel, I think you're the last one, GP6. Am I correct? Go ahead, Chantel.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So sources of evidence is students' questionnaires, interviews, attendance register, peer interviews, rewards of excellent teacher performance, logbook, board reports, students' interview.
Thank you so much. And so, colleagues, teachers, what you have just done is to locate examples of artifacts that you can use as evidence for the specific guiding principles that are on the appraisal. Please note that this list is not exhaustive. I also want you to note that you would have heard your colleagues reading repetition of some artifacts. For example, you would have seen lesson plan in GP1 and you would have heard lesson plan being in a GP3 as well. So in terms of using one artifact to represent evidence for a particular teaching standard, it is repeated. Again, it is how you use the evidence, and we will address that. Go ahead, Kinsley. And for Garcia,
Kingsley,
it's on our website. Go ahead, Kinsley.
Right, a quick question here. I see how board reports.
Yes.
How does one go about acquiring the board reports?
All right, so you have different process of management in every school. So that's a discussion you need to have with your principals. But remember, you do have teachers who have posts of special responsibilities who would represent and sit on board. All right. And so this particular evidence would have spoken to that. For example, when I was in the classroom, my board chair would give reports to each teacher at the end of the year based on observations that he or she would have had of us and the conversation. So we would have had those little snippets to show and to prove our performance. Sometimes, in some cases, you'll get a little letter to say thank you for X for this year. And, we're proud that you have moved your grade level by using a particular strategy or whatever, and the board applaud you. So different boards do different things. It comes down to the culture of your school. All right. But if your school is not doing that, it's a good time to start that conversation. Okay. Any other question? You may raise your hand and then I can move on. And as I was saying earlier, that what we just did was for you to locate the artifacts that you can use to guide or to start to curate your evidence folder. All right. So I guess I can move on. Can I move on? If I can, say go ahead. Please. Go ahead. Go ahead. All right. Wonderful. So on the screen, you should see my next slide, which is gathering appraisal data, appraisal evidence. Now that you have located where the evidence is on your appraisal document, how do you gather this evidence? How do you gather the pictures, the lesson plans, all of these? How do you put them together? And the answer to Kadian is no, you do not need to have all the evidence for each GP. It is what story do you want to tell? Right, Kadian? So you have maybe 15 evidence for GP1. But for standard 1 of GP1, you might only need 2 of those artifacts, maybe only 1 of those artifacts. All right? So it depends on your story. You are the storytellers. You are the architect of your teaching career, your development. You decide what evidence you use to tell what story. What GP, what evidence will I use? All right? So gathering appraisal evidence, first thing you need to note is that your evidence must be aligned to the professional standards. So let me quickly go back to this slide. Here on the screen, you have standard GP1, 1.1, the performance evidence 1. Your teaching, your evidence must be aligned to this. What do I mean? Your evidence that if you have a picture of an activity of students doing something in your class, you're going to ask yourself, what story am I telling? What can this show evidence of? Can it show evidence of GP1? Or is it GP2? Or is it GP3? And if it is GP3, which performance evidence is it? Is it evidence 1 or evidence 2? I don't know, colleagues, what story you want to tell, because you can have a picture and tell a story with it for GP1, but I can take that very same picture and tell a story for GP4. All right, and we will get to the storytelling shortly. Moving quickly along. So you're going to align it to your priorities. You're also going to ensure that you are collecting consistent artifacts. Okay, so for example, someone in the chat had asked earlier if a doctor should stop in the middle of his or her task and take a picture to show evidence, and the answer to that is definitely not. But you do co-teach sometimes, you do have teacher activities, you plan your lessons, and you have an idea of, you know what, I believe that tomorrow's lesson or next week's activity is something I would want to capture. Ask one of your teacher colleagues to pop by and take the picture for you. Ask a student to take the picture for you. You can ask an ancillary staff member to take that picture for you. All right, so you have different areas and ways in which you can gather your evidence. Is that clear? So we're not going to tell you, oh, I must stop to do this. But as you plan teachers, you have that little gut feeling that, say, yes, that this activity going to be shot. Or you know what? This is an activity that I want to use to show my progress. And so you make that concerted effort to capture and to make sure that you collect that. So for example, you do testing, you do your assessments. Don't you keep evidence of what scores the students have? All right. So you need to ask yourself, what can I gather? And what we here at JTC say, just gather first. Okay. Collect your evidence first. Don't think about what you're trying to show. Always just collect, and then afterwards you sort. All right? So don't think about what it is you are collecting. Make sure you are collecting. All right? Also, ensure that you're doing this on a timely basis and you're doing it continuously. Do not be like some teachers who they did an activity, the students did a lovely dramatization, singing and different creative expressions, but they forget to capture this activity. And then after that, they ask the students to redo it so that they can take the picture. No. Try to get your artifacts as authentic as possible, because tell you what, you see, if you do things like that, the students are going to tell you that no. When their evaluation of you comes up, they will tell the appraiser. When you gather your artifacts, as I said earlier, the first thing you're going to do is to just gather your artifacts. Don't think about the standard immediately. As you teach, as you are working with your students, as you are engaging with your colleagues, gather your artifacts. When it's time for you to analyze your artifacts, there are 3 categories that you can put your artifacts in. The first one is known as showcase appraisal evidence. What do we mean by showcase appraisal evidence? These are evidence that says to you, I have done that, or I have that particular evidence. It showcases evidence of your skills and your competencies. So showcase artifacts, all those listings that your colleagues read for you, what they do is to showcase your skills and your competencies. And when you have showcase artifacts, all they're saying to the appraiser and to you, yes, I have done that activity, or I have that part, that evidence. No explanation is required. The evidence will speak for itself. An example is a certificate of competence, a certificate that you would have gotten, or a picture of you engaging in an activity. Now, in this particular scenario, we have the evidence 1, which is the certificate. So I gather my evidence 1. Then I look at it and I say, what is this artifact evidence of? And when I go through my appraisal document, I realize that it will speak to GP1, standard 1, which says that I obtain certificate records of professional development to enhance my overall effectiveness. When I look and I start to analyze the picture that I collected, and I say, here I am in this picture talking with my colleagues. This was this activity that I had, and this was done on Professional Development Day. And I scroll down my appraisal document, which, by the way, teachers, you must have with you. And again, I say it is on our website. You scroll down the appraisal document, you see that, okay, this artifact is an evidence, or can be used as evidence of me sharing with my peers my experiences. And so I can use this as evidence for GP4, point 4 with standard 5. Okay? Then we go to the next type of evidence. Process appraisal evidence. What are these about? So you are collecting again, colleagues, you are collecting. And so I have collected a blog. I know we'll analyze my blog. This is blog of students' work. So I have analyzed my blog and I realize that this is a blog of students employing, say, a reading strategy that I had implemented in the class in order to complete essay writing, because they were having an issue with that strategy. And so I was implementing the processes of getting my students to become good writers. Process appraisal evidence colleague will identify steps taken to address a teaching learning issue or to implement a strategy or a program. Its aim is to highlight competency or skill in accomplishing a task by answering the question of how. Process evidence says, this is what I have done, and this is the way that I did it. So here I have my blog of my students' work that is showing the processes, the students applying the processes of implementing that strategy. And when I look to my appraisal document now, I see that GP 2.4, standard 4, is used as a variety. It says use a variety of instructional technologies and class organization to improve student participation and learning outcomes. So here I am using this student's blog for learning outcome, and I use it as evidence as such. Second evidence I have is evidence of action research. What can I use this evidence for? I have my evidence. Remember, we start evidence first. Collect, collect, collect. If you don't have the artifacts, you don't have an evidence, right? So you collect. So I have collected my action research. I have my action research. Again, I reflect, I analyze, and I say to myself, what can I use this action research as evidence of? I go to my appraisal document. I look, I see GP3. I go down to GP3, standard 6. GP3, so on the guiding principle 3, you have different levels.
Sorry,
And
Miss
standard
Bailey?
3, yes, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Just a minute. Teachers, good afternoon. I see some questions in the chat, and as Miss Bailey goes through, some might not be answered because there's so many.
Oh
Yes,
my gosh, thank you.
That's fine, right? But she is going through. One person has asked that if you could go over 1.2. I'm going to be joining from a different device in a minute, just to let you know, teachers, that we'll continue the conversation next week, Thursday afternoon, Miss Bailey, right? And Miss Bailey will be there. Dr. Gordon will also be there, and we are going to be going through to cover all the gray areas. Do invite all the teachers to join. But just to point that out, Miss Bailey, publication is one. How can I go about the publishing aspect? One. And
yes,
also
I'll be touching that
1.2. So just to let you know that those are in the chat. All right.
All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Spirit Wilmot, and
You're
see
welcome.
you on the next device.
Right.
All right.
And so I need to be made co-host. Mr. Leslie, if you can hear me on the next device. Just to say that in the chat, I would have also shared, Miss Bailey, a little tip that I find really works, which I would have used as an educator in the classroom. Just make note of that, teachers, as it relates to your preparing from September with your Google Drive. So, Miss Bailey, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Wilmot. All right. So for the person who asked about the different standard 1.1, 1.4, just quickly to say that the appraisal document is arranged or designed built on guiding principles, and showing on the screen right there. Guiding principle 1 has categories to it. So here you have guiding principle 1 at the top on the screen, but going to the left, you will have 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. So the 0.3 is telling you section of that particular guiding principle. And then you have the performance evidence that you're looking for, all right? Right, so so just to go quickly again, so showcase tells you, yes, I have that. and I have done that. Evidence speaks for itself. Process appraisal evidence says, this is what I have done and this is the way that I did it. And the last set we have is progress appraisal evidence. And progress appraisal evidence says, this is where I started, here is where I am, and there is where I want to be. So when you gather these artifacts to use as progress appraisal evidence, you're saying to the appraiser, you know what? This is where I started at. Here is where I am. That's where I want to be. So say, for example, you were told that you were not I don't want to use this one. You have not been participating in your teaching PTA activities, right? So you could use progress appraisal to show that yes, I have been. This is what I started with, and this is where I am going with that. All right. So here we have an example of the progress. Example 1, this is a communication log, and this could be a communication log as it relates to your parents. And so your first appraisal, last year's appraisal, you would have been found wanting, or you needed to improve your interactions with parents. And so you have the log to say, maybe you started this log in January, because September to December you didn't have this. And in your preliminary or formative appraisal, that would have been pointed out to you. Then in January, you would have instituted your log. And so that is saying to you, yeah, you saw me in September, I wasn't communicating so well, but here I am now, and this is where I am. And I know come May, I will be even further on, and even next year. And so you look on that log and you see it's GP number 5, right? Guiding principle 5. Standard 1, communicated with parents or guardians on students' performance. And the same thing we have in the next example there. We have excerpts from teacher journal, your reflective journal that you would keep. You could have excerpts from there, and you can use this as evidence for GP number 6, standard 1, which says respected time, being on time for class, for school events, and meeting deadlines. So in your little reflection, you would have done a tracker for yourself in terms of what it is that you would have been doing. So persons are saying, what evidence can you use for GP5, standard 1? Here, the example I have here is the communication log for the student's behavior. But again, as I said, you have the list of artifacts at the bottom, and you can decide which one is suitable for what, depending on your context and what you have. All right. Moving on quickly, I don't want to be here for next. I'm asking you for another 10, 15 minutes for us to go through quickly. So I want you to get this point that rather than searching for a piece of evidence to demonstrate your performance in a particular part of the rubric, you are to first select your piece of evidence, and then you identify the standard. Okay? So collect. And this is what we find here at the council, colleagues. You have been working, but then when it comes to your appraisal, you don't have the artifact. So we're asking you, collect. After you have collected, you can always go and align to what it is that you are doing. All right? So you're going to collect, then you are going to align, and then you identify the standards. And also note, many artifacts can be used to demonstrate multiple parts of the rubric, but it depends on what story you want to tell. All right? I had this activity for us to do, but time allowing, I really don't want to have you on much longer. But quickly, for those who have their lesson plans, here we have lesson plans, which is a staple of a teacher. Question that is usually asked of us. Lesson plans should be used as evidence for guiding principles 1, 2, and 3. So for guiding principles 1, 2, and 3, going into your appraisal, Yes, please make sure you get familiar with your appraisal documents and you can read all the standards as it relates to that. Your lesson plans should be used as evidence for guiding principles 1, 2, and 3, because all the standards will speak to things that should be in your lesson plan. So for guiding principle number 1, 1.2, 3, and 4. Guiding principle number 2, when you look on the appraisal document, it's every standard. For guiding principle 2, that says teacher knows how to teach a subject for which he or she is responsible. So you must have a lesson plan in terms of that. Guiding principle 3, lesson plan again, every standard. So you can align your lesson plans, use a lesson plan for evidence for that. For guiding principles 4, 5, and 6, you don't have to use a lesson plan, but it can be used. Again, it depends on the story that you wish to tell. All right? It depends on the story that you wish to tell. So guiding principle number 4, for example, you can use it for 2, for standard 2, for not right. So 4.1, 2, and it says evaluation of lesson in teacher sharpens his or her professional skills. So you could use the evaluation of your lesson where you would have asked students to give feedback, like maybe smiley face or a feedback form of how it is that you have taught your professional skills, because students will be very honest to tell you, Miss, you need to improve on this or improve on that. And you can use that feedback that students give you from your list in terms of what you need to improve on your professional skills and show evidence, that relationship. They told me this in this lesson. I did that. I did this by asking my mentors to assist me. And then I moved on and I have improved. All right. Guiding principle 5, you can use a lesson plan where it says 5.2, teacher interact with parents and community. In your lesson, if you have activities in your lesson where the community members were involved in critiquing, evaluating, or even mentoring the students to get a project-based activity done, and it is shown in the development of your 5 E's in your lesson plan that you use community, people outside of you to help to transmit this knowledge, actively engage with the learners, you can use that lesson plan there as evidence. And for guiding principle 6, teacher conducts himself or herself in a manner that uplifts the profession. Guiding GP 6, standard 6, you can use a peer evaluation. So you would have written your lesson plan, but before you execute this lesson plan, you would have asked a peer to review this lesson plan for you, to show you the weaknesses and strengths. And that lesson plan that peer would have reviewed, you would have submitted or used that as evidence in your artifact folder, in your portfolio as evidence that I am working with my colleagues to uplift my standards in terms of what we do, because collaboration, getting people to work together, is a key component of what you do. All right, so I trust that helps thus far. And I am quickly going through. If I'm going too fast, guys, you can tell me to slow down. All right. So section 3, organizing appraisal evidence. And like I said, I'm closing off soon. Here, I want us to look on briefly the portfolio document. All right. Please note that when you have selected your artifacts, you have, yes, a math coach counts. Once you have selected your artifacts, you are to have them curated and in a document, in a file that you can organize. So the evidence for the appraisal must be organized and kept in a teacher portfolio. We do not say to you that the portfolio has to be e-portfolio or it has to be hard copy. That is a discussion that you will have with your with your school. They will decide whether the submission of your artifacts should be in the online space, or if it will be, or if it should be hard copy. That's a conversation you have there. But what I want you to note is that in organizing your portfolio, it is based on the appraisal document. As shown there, I want you to look on the arrows that are presented there. So the evidence, say you're looking on evidence of teaching innovations, there you see the chapter in the portfolio, chapter 7, evidence of teaching innovations. The guiding principle is identified. Guiding principle addressed in the chapter GP4. And there you have the list, sample of evidence that you can use. Research done by teacher, creative approaches, copies of lesson observations, self-assessments, and so forth. The structure or the document that helps you with putting your portfolio together is also located on our website in the resource area. So feel free to go there, and this document is there, and you can see how to align your evidence, organize your evidence in your teacher portfolio. So in organizing your appraisal evidence, you are required, you can't just throw the documents in. All right, you can't just pick a picture and put down. You can't just pick you can't just pick a lesson plan and just put the lesson plan in and say, I have an evidence, here it is. You need to tell that story. You need to explain that story for the appraisal. And so in your document, in your appraisal document, in your e-portfolio or your portfolio rather, you need to have a reflection or an analysis or a written summary that goes along with the evidence that you would have supplied. For example, and I just have 2 slides and I'm done, and I will put in the link after that. For example, we have here we have teaching methods and strategies. This teacher placed a picture as evidence, and this evidence is for GP2 and GP3. So in her portfolio, she would have had a picture, and she's using this picture for GP2 and GP3. And the teacher has written explanation that contextualizes the use of each picture as evidence of the GP, and the picture is also labeled. Remember, the portfolio is not a graded document. It is a conversational piece. So if it is that your rating, you got a rating of 1, and your appraiser is saying to you that your appraiser is saying to you that you cannot your score rather is what, I got distracted by what is in the chat, that your score is 3 and you feel that your rating should have been the full 6. That's when you pull on your evidence folder and say, let's look on GP2, GP3. Here are my evidence that I would have had over the period. All right, so labeling of the evidence is important. So there the teacher would have said, as I seek to inculcate in my learners positive values and practical life skills, I subscribe to 3 teaching approaches. These are Socratic, facilitative, proponent. Socratic, and she went on to explain that. And finally, and also continuing, the facilitative and the proponent is also there. All right, if you wanted to showcase the use of formative assessment or data-driven instruction, you can use multiple different types of appraisals, artifacts rather, and you can use that in order to show evidence of your work. All right. I am placing in the chat for you the link for the exit slip for this session, so you can find it there. And while you are doing that, I want to open the floor and to hear any questions, comments, or concerns. Remember, this is just a 1-hour presentation. And we are just going through just for you to locate. The aim for me today was to help you to locate where the evidence, examples of evidence. I wanted you to understand how it is that you align your appraisal evidence to the guiding principles. And I also wanted you to understand that the portfolio itself is not a graded document, but is a conversational piece that when you would have done your appraisal and you are doing that post-mortem, if it is that your rating is not what you would have want, you would have had that folder to say, let us now go to, can you look at this? This is my evidence that I have. And you can start that discussion there. All right. So I can take, say, 5 comments or questions by raising your hands, and I can facilitate. Go ahead, Claudine.
All right, good afternoon, everyone.
Good
As it
afternoon.
relates to GP 1.1, I think, how would you rate using the descriptor on the appraisal document?
It's based, I cannot respond to that question because I do not know the context of their school. The descriptors, all descriptors that are used are descriptors that would have been formulated by your school based on the context of your situation, which would have been agreed upon. All right. So I cannot say to you that I can give you a 2 or a 3 or a 1. But you please free to join us in our sessions, upcoming sessions every Thursday, starting next week, where we will go through some of those answers for you. All right.
Great job, Ms. Bailey. Teachers, I wanted to show some appreciation in the chat for Ms. Bailey, who obviously has prepared to do this presentation. And so we want to just let her know how much we appreciate that which she has prepared and delivered. Thank you so much. I see Miss Rose, your hand is raised. Go ahead. For the exit ticket, it will cover both sessions. All right, so don't worry about it. Once it's completed,
right, once you're in,
it will cover both.
Okay, so thank you so much, colleagues. And we're about to get out of here, but I just want to know, I'm giving 2 other persons. Is that Miss Andrea Rose? Go ahead, Andrea.
Good afternoon.
If you had signed the exit form from Mr. Leslie's session, it will be okay, all right? Because we will cover for both. All right, but get into this one as you can. Go ahead, Andrea. Sorry about that. Okay, Andrea. All right, let me ask Keisha.
Okay, good afternoon. I just want to ask something. Can I use a website instead of
That's okay, right? I know what you're going to say. All you need to do is to have a link. All right. So you will have your link to the different components. If you put excerpt from a lesson plan, then you would have a link to that lesson plan, maybe on your computer system, or you would have listed in your e-portfolio the term, the grade, the lesson, from which you can find that lesson plan in your lesson plan book. All right. So you'll have some identifier that if they want to verify, they can go to the lesson plan book and find it. All right. You're welcome. Go ahead, Keisha.
Good afternoon. You've mentioned the meeting on Thursdays, so I was asking if we could get that link. Would really appreciate it.
Okay, so you can check out
in the chat, Miss Bailey.
It's in the chat, all right, and Miss is going to put it there. But also look on our website or Facebook, our social media pages, and you will find us there as well. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tamoy, go ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening. Go ahead.
Okay, I don't know if you have any information on this, but I have attended many workshops.
Okay, I'm gonna stop you. I'm gonna stop you right there. Can you call us or email us, and we will deal with that. All right. So we just want to stick to the content of the presentation. Sorry to cut you short, but if you email or call us, we will get that done for you. All right. And Miss Wilmot can put my email in the chat for you to pull out. Okay. I think that is I think that is it. I'm not seeing anyone else. Thank you so much, colleagues, for staying with us and being with us this afternoon as we presented our PD sessions. Remember, self-care, have some rest. Yes, you would have gotten some information, but take some breather this time and get ready to come back fresh and rejuvenated. For any information, clarification, support, we're here at the council. We're willing and able to support you. So feel free to reach out to us at any time and we will support your endeavors. And remember, the appraisal process is not a punitive one. It is collaborative and it is developmental and it is all based on discussion. So if you gather your evidence and you can tell the story of your evidence and you can speak on your evidence, rest assured you will get your rating. Thank you so much. Be safe and God bless. Bye-bye, everyone.
Hi, Miss Daly. Mr. Leslie's on. Wonderful.